This gentleman probably doesn't need an introduction, but I enjoyed kind of writing these notes down. So Chris Zorich, a 1991 graduate, All-American in 1989 and 1990, College Defensive Player of the Year in 1989, Lombardi Award winner in 1990, and I believe his senior year, Sports Illustrated called him the meanest player in college football. He was drafted by the Bears, so his career in the NFL was with the Bears and the Washington football team. Not allowed to say that one, right? He's currently a partner with Randall Partners. He is the host of the Zorich podcast. His wife, Candy, couldn't be here this evening. He's got a daughter. But please welcome Chris Zorich to the stage, and thank you for being here.
Hello? Yep, it is on. So I have the pleasure to introduce a wonderful guy, but you got to give me like 5 minutes, or maybe not 5 minutes, like 3 minutes. I just want to thank the Notre Dame Club of Chicago for really being there for me in a really difficult time. My mom passed away January 2nd of '91. It was right after a bowl game, and it was a really hard time for me. And the following Rockne dinner, I was honored. And from that day on, I've been just so fortunate to still be in the Chicago area, but more importantly, have the Notre Dame Club of Chicago embrace me. My first job I had when I was at Notre Dame over the summer was from a past president, Mike Roche, and then he also hired me after I graduated from law school. Just so thankful to him and his family, and really the rest of the folks that have participated in the Notre Dame Club of Chicago over the years. So I just want to say thank you guys very much. I appreciate that. Now, I feel like an announcer, I could kind of dim the lights and get folks excited. Before I get to introduce him again, I got another little caveat. Keith mentioned that I have the Zorich podcast. It's not a plug for that, but I had a chance to have Marcus on a couple weeks ago. And I just want to let him know that I called the NCAA. I do not have one more year left. They said no. So on the podcast, I was so fired up to play again that I told him, I was like, dude, put me in, coach, and I'm sure you guys are going to feel the exact same way. So he's just that awesome. So here's his introduction. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you very much to Joanna, his wife, and as well as Vinny, Sienna, Gio, Nico, Capri, and Rocco for sharing their dad with us this evening, because he could be at home with them hanging out because they got training camp in a little bit, but these folks chose to come out here, so we want to thank you guys very much for doing that, for spending time with us. Thank you. As a player at Ohio State, he was a two-time Big Ten player, all Big Ten player, as well as academic all Big Ten. He had a chance to win 4 Big Ten championships at Ohio State, had a chance to participate in 2 national championship games, drafted by our hometown Chicago Bears, received a master's degree from Ohio State in 2011, coached at Kent State, Purdue, served 3 years as Cincinnati's defensive coordinator before accepting the job at Notre Dame as our defensive coordinator. His defenses at Cincinnati ranked in the top 20 in several categories, 13th in total defense, 8th in scoring defense, 3rd in passing efficiency defense, and 10th in overturns gained. Not sure what that means, but I'm sure it's awesome. And I'm sure a lot of you guys might not know this, but he received his black belt in Taekwondo at the age of 12. Awesome. He has a very interesting journey in becoming Notre Dame's Bob Hinton defensive coordinator. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Freeman. So this is going to be very exciting. I have a time limit, so I swear to God, my questions will be brief. However, before we get started, can you please tell us a little bit about who Marcus Freeman is, kind of your journey, and kind of how you got involved in football?
Well, you gave me a great introduction now. I don't know how much more I can add to that, but obviously my wife Joanna's here, and I want to thank her for coming. And listen, this is a little bit of a parents' night out now. Like we were begging to get out of the house, leave those 6 kids back in South Bend. So this is a retreat for us to get away. So, but no, obviously you can read the bio, the journey to get to Notre Dame. But ultimately, you're in this position to serve these young people. And that's what motivates me. That's what gives me the greatest inspiration, is to serve these young people and see guys reach their goals. That's what that means, right? To make time and effort to make sure that these young people reach every goal they have. So I'm excited to do it at the best place in the country, and I look forward to a lot of great years here at Notre Dame.
Oh, I'm sure that's going to happen. That's definitely going to happen. But, I mean, tell us a little bit about kind of how you got involved in football. I mean, I know there were some other sports you got involved in. Do y'all realize, like, he was, oftentimes oftentimes great players don't become coaches. But, I mean, he was all Big Ten. Like, he was a stud. Like, he had a chance to compete for a national championship. So this is great that you're going to start kind of be a mentor and tutor our future players, but tell us a little bit kind of like your football story.
Well, I spent 4 years at Ohio State and was drafted in 2009 to the Chicago Bears. And then after 1 year in the NFL, they found an enlarged heart valve. And so I had always thought that I was going to get into administration. I wanted to be an athletic director, and then all of a sudden your career's cut short and you're like, man, I want to stay involved with football. And so in 2009, you think, hey, man, what does it mean to be a coach? You get to be on the sidelines on the game days. You get to wear the polos, make money. And that's all I want to do that, And quickly you learned the satisfaction you get as a coach is when you see, as I said earlier, young people reach their goals. Like that, the winning is important. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if we didn't win. The competitive side of coaching is something that it drives me, right? I'm a competitive person, as I know you are and many people in this room, but the motivation, the why, the what wakes you up is to see young people reach their goals. And that's what I've developed over the course of being a coach, is that, hey, what's going to drive you every day to go and give it everything you got is to watch these young people reach their goals.
Well, you had a very unique situation. You were recruited by, coached by, eventually employed by all the same guy. We're talking about Luke Fickell, okay? And he was there when Marcus was a freshman, yep. Right? And spent literally a bunch of time with him. And then after that, Marcus moved around a little bit and wound up hiring him as defensive coordinator. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of what his relationship has meant to you.
Well, it's unique in terms of you go from being a 17-year-old where this college coach recruits you. And, a reason why I love college football is because you think about when we're all 18 to 22, such a vulnerable age, such an age where, you can learn a lot about who you want to become. And so from 18 to 22, he was my position coach, right? And so a lot of the lessons I learned on how I want to be as a husband, how I want to be as a father was really watching him. Not as much as the things that somebody says, but, hey, watching and evaluating other people. And it was really unique. Well, then you fast forward to 2010, now I'm his GA, right? And we have kids that are the same age. Then you fast forward to 2017, okay, and now I'm his defensive coordinator. Some things never change. Like, at times I still felt like I was a player for him, you know what I mean? But I've learned a tremendous amount from him and many others that have coached me. But obviously Luke Fickell was a guy that had a major impact and a reason why I'm in this position I am today. And so it'll be interesting. We play them week 3, 4, right around there. They come up to South Bend, and that'll be an interesting one. But, it's still nothing more important to go out there and find a way to win.
Well, and you guys were like really close. I mean, y'all even spent some time, like you were down in his basement hanging out for a little bit, right?
Yeah, we did. So Luke Fickell and his wife have 6 kids, and so We were in the process of Cincinnati of moving homes, and my wife told me the house would be ready by August something. Well, we got back from camp, and it was August 15th, and the dang house wasn't ready. So we didn't have many options, and we kind of moved into their basement.
Wow.
And so it's just 12 kids, 4 adults. I mean, it is what it is, you know. So I spent many hours at the office. I was not going, like, I don't want to go home and hang out with my boss. Like, I kind of want to just stay in my office, so that's usually what I did.
Well, and it just talks about really kind of the great relationship that can happen when you're a player with your coach, right? But eventually this became something special. Yeah. And kind of on those lines, I mean, what was the conversation when you decided, or when folks started to contact you about possibly moving on from Cincinnati? I mean, you had spent literally, years and years with Luke,
Yep.
and now it was a possibility that you may be leaving. I mean, what was that like?
Well, it was long conversations with my wife, and it's hard because one of the people you would go to usually to talk about difficult situations was also your boss. And so, I really couldn't spend much time talking to him about it. I was talking to my wife, and we prayed on it, and we decided, hey, we're not going to go too far, and we decided to come to South Bend, and we decided to go to LSU, which many people know, and we went home, and we said, hey, what's the best decision for our family? And obviously, we made the right one, and I'm learning every day. Yeah. And Chris, the reality is we knew Notre Dame was unique, and I say we. She helped me. She had more influence than me, but we knew Notre Dame was unique. We didn't know why. I don't think I knew why, but I knew something about Notre Dame was different than anywhere else in the country, and that's kind of what attracted me and her to kind of say, this is where we're going to go. The minute you're here, you realize why Notre Dame's special. Events like this, right? The Rockne event in Chicago where you got hundreds of people here to support Notre Dame. Like, this is what makes Notre Dame special. And now that I'm here, I understand why.
You can applaud for that. You mentioned briefly that there's a game in October, maybe October 2nd, who knows, where you'll be playing Cincinnati. And as a former player, which I'm sure you tell your guys, you never look ahead. But when you have a chance to, and I know your job's going to be on the line, so it's not like you can treat me special, but kind of talk to us a little bit. I know it hasn't happened yet, but talk to us a little bit about kind of that mentor coach relationship that you guys had, and is it going to be tough? I mean, again, y'all spent a whole bunch of time together in the basement, things like that. But I mean, what's going to be your thinking behind that?
Well, there's two things to me when you ask that question. What goes to my head? One is that I have a job to do, and it's to get Notre Dame's defense prepared to be the best in the country, right? And we got a job to go out there, and it's to dominate. And so that's what's going to be in my makeup. Now, the other aspect of that is what motivates me, right? And I've already said it. It's the players. It's serving these young people. So that's going to be on my mind. If I'm not trying to help these young people reach their goals, and I'm not doing everything in my power to make sure Notre Dame's defense is prepared to be successful, then I'm cheating myself and I'm cheating Notre Dame.
Sure.
And so that's what my focus is going to be. Is it going to be different to see your former coach across the field? Yeah. But I got a job to do, right? I got to serve these kids, and I got to make sure that we're prepared to be successful, and that's where my mentality and my mindset will be.
Then after the game, they'll have a chance to kind of point them at him and say, yeah, we did it.
Yeah, I plan on going to give him a big hug and celebrating. I don't know what he's, you know what I mean? He might not want to talk to me. I don't know, but that's my plan.
Let's hope that's the case, right? He just kind of blows you off a bit. You've had a chance to be involved in coaching for some time. When you were on my podcast, you talked about kind of a moment when you knew that coaching was for you. And it was when you were GAing at Ohio State and you were coaching the drop ends. Yep. Can you share that story with us, please?
Well, I think this is the time where I realized coaching wasn't about being on the field Saturday, rah, pump them up, let's go. It was a situation, I can't remember the exact game, but I know, as a GA, you're in charge of one position. So the one position was the drop in, as he called it. And, you give a kid a Friday night tip sheet, or you try to set him up for a chance to be successful. Well, then all of a sudden you go and you see the game, the kid execute exactly what you told him was going to happen. He was able to go get a sack. And that gave me the greatest fulfillment there could be. In that moment, I knew it. I said, that's it. That's it. When you give these young people opportunities to succeed and then they go do it, like that's what motivates you. That's what wakes you up. And that's what gives you the drive. And that's what I've realized, man. It's the text messages from your former players, right? Because my guys never want to tell me thank you right into my face. They wait till they leave and they shoot me a text and, hey, coach, thanks for pushing me. Thanks for loving me. Thanks for helping me. I understand why. That's the fulfillment. That's what gives me the motivation. And so that's the story behind that in 2010.
Well, I'm sure you've talked to some folks in here kind of about the journey getting to Notre Dame. Can you share with us kind of what it felt like to be recruited at 35? I mean, this happened all over again, right? Yeah. So kind of tell us really kind of how you got here. Kind of give us all the juicy details. We don't need the amount of salary. We don't need that.
No.
But just,
it was, we're getting ready to play Georgia. We've had a successful season. We're 9-0 at the time. We're playing really good defense. And after the game, you kind of, coaches are relentless. Like after the game, voicemails of, hey, we want you to be our defensive coordinator. Hey, we're interested in talking to you. And ultimately, it was going home and saying, okay, where do we really want to go investigate? Like, let's go see what's best for our family. We didn't want to go out west. We didn't want to, certain schools in the SEC we weren't interested in, but it was, hey, let's go to Notre Dame because it's Notre Dame, and then let's go to LSU. And it's pretty cool. Like, I was 34 at the time, you know what I mean? And to be able to go and they fly you on the private jets, and that's cool stuff, man. I'm like, hey, listen, I don't care if you're 18 or you're 34, 35. Like, to be on the private jet and flying around and people trying to court you, that's pretty cool, And so we did it. And it was a great reminder for me about what recruiting's about. Because when you were at Notre Dame, you were like, man, this is Notre Dame. Like, we want to come. You were at LSU, and you were like, man, this is unbelievable. It's SEC, it's LSU, we want to go. But we made a decision that we were not going to commit to any place without going home and decompressing.
Sure.
And that's where, to me, Notre Dame is different, right? I've been at places where you bring kids in on official visits, and you're going to try to get them to say yes before they leave because you try to give them this 48 hours of a fantasy world. I'm going to give you 48 hours, you're going to be the best 48 hours, and by the end of it, I'm going to say, take it, right now, take it. Because I know if you go home and you really think about it, I don't know if I can compete with a Notre Dame, right? But at Notre Dame, what I'm realizing after this official visit cycle of the summer, you want to go home and think about it, go home. Go home, because what makes Notre Dame special, yes, it's the people, but it's the facts, right? It's the things that the 4 for 40. It's the football excellence. Like that's not make-believe. We're not selling a product that isn't real, right? The 11 national championships that Notre Dame has won, that's real. That's facts. You know what I mean? The NFL success, the number of players drafted into the NFL, right, being number one, that's facts. That's not make-believe. The 4 for 40, the network, the people that separate Notre Dame from everywhere else in the country, like that's real. So I don't need to pressure you in 48 hours to make a decision. Like, you can go home and think about it, because I did that, and that's where Notre Dame separates itself from anywhere else.
So there was also a call between you and Coach Kelly, too. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. When Coach Kelly wants to recruit, he's a good one now, and I remember we got off the plane from LSU, and he called, and he said, hey, you're going to make this decision based off facts. And you're not going to make this decision based off money. You're not going to make this decision based off SEC. You're just going to make this decision based off facts. So everything's going to be the same. And basically that's what he said. And also you go back to the time we walked into his office, right? Within the first 2 minutes, he had mentioned all 6 kids' names. And for that one, she was done. She was done. And so he didn't even talk to me during that interview in his office. It was all about, he knew, hey, you get her, there's a good chance you're getting me. There's a great chance, and that's what he did. He's smart, man. He is intelligent.
I think his wife obviously needs a round of applause for that.
So that's the gist of it.
And was it, there was a conversation about finances too. And which is kind of encouraging because historically, because Notre Dame is such a great place, historically they're not known to be top, I gotta say this nicely, they don't pay their coaches very well, right? Because, and this is just in the past, over the years, that necessarily wasn't the case in this case. Obviously, we're not gonna talk about dollar amounts, but the fact that they kind of check that box is very encouraging to us fans because that doesn't happen all the time.
Here's probably the best way to say this without getting into too much detail is that the days of you're going to come to Notre Dame because it's Notre Dame, I don't know if that's the case as much with the younger generation. Right? Even when I think about my recruiting process, Notre Dame had not won a national championship since '88, right? And so it was starting to fade away, the national champions Notre Dame, And so what Jack Schwarber and Coach Kelly did was they said, hey, we're going to make this place as sexy as anywhere else in the country. And then we're going to base it off the facts, right? And so it's the same thing that we do, I hope, in recruiting now. Let's make this place the sexiest place in the country to get you here, to get you interested. And then we'll let you make the decision based off facts. So people brought up the Oklahoma deal where they had the cars, right? They had a big event. They brought cars and former players. And I remember somebody said to me, well, at Notre Dame, you don't need to do that. Oh, yeah, we do. Oh, yeah, we do. Because that's what gets the young people here. Let's get them here, and then let's let them make it off the facts, right? You're not going to come to Notre Dame because we had a car here. But if that's going to attract you to South Bend and our campus, I know when you leave there's no competition. So let's do whatever it takes to get them here. Same thing with Coach Kelly when he got on the phone. Let's do whatever it takes to get you here. Then you make the decision based off facts. And that's what he did, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
See, and this is very encouraging to hear because, and I obviously don't know the details of every coach, but when they can match a school like LSU or other SEC schools to get great coaches, that's very encouraging. And then you have a chance to kind of put the icing on top of the cake when it's a place like Notre Dame. So it's very encouraging to hear. We're going to talk about recruiting and stuff like that in a little bit, but I want to kind of talk about your style as a defensive coordinator. What can we expect from a Marcus Freeman defense that's going to be taking the field this year?
Yeah, I was in the back talking with Julie, and I'm like, listen, we can talk ball all day now. You know what I mean? We can talk ball, and here's the 3 things we talk about the goal. We call it the golden standard. The golden standard is how we're going to play defense here, and it's 3 things. One, it's challenge everything. It's a mentality, right? Challenge everything, meaning the new generation that wants to know why, right? They want to know. Like my dad was military, 26 years in the Air Force. My dad said, turn right, I turn right. He said, turn left, I turn left. Yes, sir, let's go. This younger generation ain't quite like that. You know what I mean? And so I embrace that as a coach. I tell our coaches, if a kid asks you why and you can't give them the answer, then maybe we need to reevaluate why we're doing something.
Sure.
Right? And so challenge everything is a mentality of coach to player. It starts with challenging yourself, right? You got to challenge yourself as an individual every day, right? And then you got coach to player, player to coach challenging each other. I'm going to push you, right? And I want you to push me. But it's that trust and the love and respect we have for each other, right? And defensively, schematically, we're going to be aggressive. We're not going to sit back, and we're not going to let people throw check downs, and we're going to pressure. We're going to play man coverage, and we're going to have some adjustments, but we're going to hang our hat on being aggressive and being a pressure attacking defensive unit. So that's challenge everything. Number 2 is the unit strength, okay? And basically, I like to tell this story. So back in 2017, all right, I'm hired as the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati, 30 years old, and thought I was the guru. Like, I'm 30 years old. I got all the answers. Like, I know I'm the defensive coordinator. And we finished that season 94th in the country in defense. Wow. And so I had to go and reevaluate what I believed it takes to be successful on defense. And one of the things was I no longer need to be the guy in front of everybody saying, hey, this is what the D-line does, this is what the corners do, this is what the safeties do, this is what the line. No. We have great coaches. And so that's the unit strength. We've got 4 head coaches on defense is how I talk to our coaches. Listen, Elston, you're the head coach of D-line. Mickens, you're the head coach of the corners. O'Leary, you're the head coach of the safeties. Your job is to get this unit, your position unit, to play above their God-given ability. It's your job to get these guys to know exactly what to do, know how to do it, and know why to do it. And most importantly, it's your job is to create this love amongst 10 people. Right? It's really hard to get 50 people to love and sacrifice for each other. They don't know each other. But if you got 10 people, 10 guys at your house, 10 guys around your family, 10 guys, you're in their lives, you're going to their house, their dorms, you know, and you're spending time with them, I think that's when you can create that decision to love each other. Like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice for you. All right, I'm going to sacrifice for you a little bit more because I love you. Like, you're in my room. I need to sacrifice for you. So that's the unit strength. Like, we're going to get these guys in their units to love each other. And the third thing is the fundamentals. Right? You're going to see us play with unbelievable effort and attitude, how hard we play. If you don't play hard, we can't play. You know, we say we got something called 1As and 1Bs. Like, we don't have 1s and 2s. It's 1As and 1Bs. Why, Coach? Why? Because we need 22 guys to play on defense, because if you're going to play with that effort and attitude that I demand and we demand, you're not going to be able to play 60 plays. You can't. It's physically impossible, right? And it's also because it's important because it's a new thing called the transfer portal, right?
We're going to talk about that too. But
you got a guy like Julian, and then all of a sudden he's a 5-star DB, and the guy in front of him is a senior. Well, if the 5-star DB that's good enough isn't playing, he might go check out the transfer portal. And so it's a way for me as a coordinator to say, listen, if the guy's good enough, he might not be the starter, but he's going to have a significant role, and he's going to understand at each game. So we have 1As and 1Bs on defense, but that goes into the effort and attitude, right? Tackling, block destruction, and then ball disruption. And so that's what you should expect to see out of the Notre Dame defense is unit strength, challenge everything, and the guys that play with the fundamentals.
we like that, right? We like that. You've had a chance to spend a little time on campus with the players. You went through a spring practice, spring game. How do you feel about what you saw and what you were able to evaluate kind of going for next year?
I'm excited. I'm excited for 2 reasons. One, because I believe in that our success will always rely on our defensive line. That's what I've always believed in, is that, hey, the better your D-line plays, the more successful you'll be at corner, safety, or linebacker.
Now, selfishly, he's a genius because I play D-line. So I think, again, this is the reason why I want to play for him, because he's a genius.
And so I feel good because we got a lot of depth there. Elston has done a great job recruiting, developing. We got a lot of seniors at that position that are going to play at a high level, that played at a high level. And so that gives me a lot of excitement. The second thing is I think we got senior leadership. The best teams I've been on, you've had really good D linemen, all right? And you've had really, really good senior leadership. And you talk about the Heinisch, the Myrons, the Drew Whites, the Kyle Hamilton. I know he's not a senior, but I mean, he's an older guy that might be considered a senior. But, you know, him and Tariq Bracy and some of those guys, man, they are leaders, right? And I believe in this. What is a leader? Is somebody that makes somebody better. That's it. Like, I don't have this big, long definition of what is a leader. A leader makes others better, and we have leaders on this defense that make other people better, and that gives me great excitement. I can't wait to get back to work and get going. Let's go.
That's very exciting.
Let's go.
Very exciting. idea about having a head coach at every position on the defensive side of the ball, that's really kind of a great concept to have, because you talked about kind of being the CEO of your little company, right? Which means now, you mentioned about guys going home, introducing to their dogs, kind of hanging out, having a good time with their family. And how challenging it is for the defensive coordinator, also the linebacker coach, to kind of see all 50, right? So can you talk a little bit about kind of what you've seen or how the relationships have progressed between your 4 head coaches and the players?
Well, I think when you run your program that way on defense, like, the position coaches have to be very crystal clear on what we want taught and implemented. So when we're not around the players, the 4, 5, 6 of us on the defense staff, we have to communicate, we have to talk. There has to be clear communication on what needs to be taught and how it's taught. But I believe in this, like, I hope everybody that's been a position coach for me in the past 5 years would be able to say, I enjoy working for him, right? Because he lets me grow, he lets me coach my position. Now, when we're together, we gotta make sure we're on the same page, but you know what, if you're the corners coach, that corner's gonna think you're the best corners coach in America, right? You don't have a coordinator walking over trying to coach them. I'm not a corner, right? I want our corners coach to own the corners. I want our safeties coach to own those safeties, and that they believe in them. And to me, that's where you create that coach-to-player relationship that you're asking about. If I'm walking over to you're the D-line coach, and I'm trying to tell your D-lineman, no, he's wrong, this is how you do it, well, they don't have any confidence in you. And so I believe in that. Empower those guys around you, right? You don't have to be the smartest guy, but it's my job to make sure we're all on the same page, right? It's my job to make sure we're all teaching it the same way. Okay, and so we got to be really good when we're away from the players, that everybody's on the same page and everybody's teaching it to each other. I make Elston teach me D-line play. I make Mickens teach me corners play, or Larry teach me, because I want to hear how they're teaching their guys, so we can all be on the same page. And that's, to me, where you create that coach-to-player relationship, all right? And the last thing about it is I believe each coach has to build trust amongst his room. Mm-hmm. And building trust is very intentional. Very intentional. It's very hard to do. Easy to lose. I've always believed trust is easy to lose, very hard to gain, right? And one, do you understand what you're talking about? That's what I tell her, do you know what you're talking about? The players got to understand it. 2, do you have a connection with your guys? That's how you build trust. Do you guys have a connection that's more than just football, right? And 3, to me, is the character part. Right, it's like, are they able to watch you? Like I told you, I did with my position coach. Are they able to watch you and say you're a man of character?
Right.
Are they able to watch you as a husband and a father and say, okay, he does things the right way? That's, to me, how you build that trust, and that's what we got to do with our players.
That's very encouraging. Yeah. Very encouraging. So now we're going to talk a little bit about recruiting, which a lot of rabid Chicago ND fans really care about, and this is very exciting for us. However, there's certain things you cannot talk about, like folks who are not on campus yet. But as I mentioned before, when we were kind of hanging out, you have a reputation already as being this elite recruiter. So much that you had an old 52-year-old guy wanting to suit up for you to play, right? That's bad. But I'm very encouraged by it. However, can you kind of share with the room kind of what you would go into their home and talk to their 18-year-old kid about coming to the University of Notre Dame?
Ooh, you want me to give me a spill, huh? All right. Okay, we can do this. Basically, here's what I would say. And let me paraphrase this by, it's our job as coaches to figure out what's going to attract you. Like, how can you comprehend the things we're trying to sell? I can't speak to you the same way maybe I speak to you, because you might understand it in a different way, right? I used this example the other day. You might go somewhere and have to use who's your favorite rapper. I've done this before. Who's your favorite rapper? And they'll give me some name. Like, I got a 13-year-old boy that loves all these different guys that I have no clue to are. Like Little Dirk, Little something, blah, blah, blah. And I'll say something like, well, here's what Notre Dame is. Have you ever heard of a man named Jay-Z? And they'll say, yeah, I know Jay-Z. I said, he just sold his company for $1 billion. That's what Notre Dame is Jay-Z. Ah, okay, coach, I get you, you know what I mean? That's different than saying, and somebody else I can go to house and say, 4 for 40. Oh, okay, it's the same thing as Jay-Z. Like, I understand that, right? And so it's important that I spend my time really with families and with players talking about what separates Notre Dame from everywhere else in the country. Like, I don't like comparing Notre Dame to anywhere else because I think Notre Dame is in a class of itself. It's Notre Dame. We're not talking SEC, Big Ten. We're not just Notre Dame, right? And that words Notre Dame sells itself. And so I like to spend time talking about the network, talking about the things that Notre Dame can offer you that nowhere else in the country can. Because if you want to talk about national championships, let's go. We got 11, right? I was reminded the day I was hired, Pete Chiavarelli gave me a replica of the 11 national championship rings, and he said, here, it's your job to get 12. I said, okay, here we go. That's what Notre Dame is,
Welcome
okay?
to Notre Dame.
Exactly, you know, and like I said, you can talk about NFL development, but that's what everybody's talking about, right? We're going to get to the national championship. We're going to develop you for the NFL. Yeah. If you want to talk about that, we can, but I'm going to tell you what we can do that nobody else can do. Like, this is what Notre Dame can do for you that nowhere else in the country can do. Right? We can offer you national championships. We can offer you NFL development. That cuts this list to 10 schools. To really talk about a chance to win a national championship. We've been in the playoffs 2 out of the past 3 years. Like, we have a legitimate shot. But there's 5 to 10 schools that really can say that, right, that have been in the playoffs. You talk about NFL development. We'll go over the numbers. Like, there's no comparison. But then you add that 4 for 40. You add that network, you add that Notre Dame degree, and there's nowhere else in the country can offer you all 3. Nowhere. Nowhere.
And when you hear the 4 for 40, it's really interesting because over the years, you've heard that thrown around in recruiting circles at Notre Dame all the time. But I think you may be one of the more recent coaches that have really kind of taken that to heart and said, okay, if we offer NFL development, if we offer the opportunity to participate in the national championship, and now we're going to offer you a degree, an experience that's going to last literally all of your life. And that's something that's not only encouraging, but often wasn't talked about in that way. And also, he used Notre Dame and Jay-Z in literally the same sentence, so that's kind of cool too, right? When you have a chance to kind of, or have you had a chance to kind of sit down and take a breath and say, wow, honey, you know, we're at Notre Dame. Have you had a chance to do that yet, or?
I think when I was standing up there taking pictures, I'm like, this is Notre Dame. I ain't never done anything like that. Just take pictures for 45 minutes. That's Notre Dame, you know? And I don't know. I've said this plenty of times. Like, I don't know if I'll ever take that opportunity to say, wow. Because once I make a decision, I'm 100 miles an hour. And I'm going to go as hard and as fast and with everything I have. And then you kind of look back when you're all done and say, oh, that's pretty cool, you know? And I think you look at my time at Cincinnati, it was the same thing. I don't know if I really look back and said, man, we went from 96 in the country to top 10 defense. But then all of a sudden you get an opportunity to go to a place like Notre Dame and you look back and say, man, that's why you're in this position. And so all I can see is just going as hard as I can. And when I want to slow down, I've said this before, when I want to slow down, I think I'm going to look at my wife and say, it's it. It's it. I don't want to get up at wee hours in the morning. I don't want to stay in the office. I want to kind of cut my hours back. I think that's when it's time to kind of get out. But right now, it's just you wake up and you go. You go, go, go.
That's great. One of the more controversial statements you made was, we're not looking for the Notre Dame man. And when you first told that to me on my podcast, I kind of freaked out. Like, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what? And it did it literally in a positive way. Like for so long, Notre Dame has recruited this certain type of player. And when you said that, I let you finish what you were saying. Then I came back to it because I wrote it down, and I was like, wait a minute, you're going to have people freaking out saying that you're not looking for that Notre Dame man along with other folks. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah.
And I promise you won't get in trouble.
I think the Notre Dame man, woman, person can be disguised in many different ways, right? I think it takes a unique person to be successful at Notre Dame. Notre Dame isn't for everybody, right? But it can be disguised in many different physical, mental, social attributes, okay? And that's what I think what we got to do is we have to go, number one, evaluate every player in the country, and let's go take this pod and say, these are the best football players in the country, right? And we're going to put them right here. And then our job is to go evaluate and have discussions and call people and talk to coaches and talk to counselors and say, can this guy make it at Notre Dame? Can he be successful, whoever that person is, at Notre Dame? I think that's a different approach than saying, we know this kid will be successful at Notre Dame, let's see how good of a football player he is, right? I think that's a totally different approach. And that's the approach I think we're taking defensively. And I don't want to speak for the years before I was here. I don't know. All I know is the minute I stepped here, I said, let's give me the best players in the country. We're going to watch them. And now let's figure out, can that person be successful at Notre Dame? Because he might not just be running to Notre Dame, right? Marcus Freeman wasn't just running to Notre Dame. But I was convinced, and now I understand why, that Notre Dame is second to no one, right? And that's what we got to do, is be able to find these players that are the best in the country, that can make it at Notre Dame, and then we got to convince them. Like, we're not going to sit on our high horse and say, they're going to come to, no. Let's convince this group of kids that Notre Dame is second to none. Unbelievable. And then that's, to me, the approach we're taking now.
It's a different approach. And we're seeing how effective it is without naming names. I mean, how is recruiting on the defensive side of the ball going for you?
It's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. I think what you're seeing is some momentum, right? And what you're seeing is certain kids maybe with this big high rating saying, hey, I'm going to come to Notre Dame, right? Then all of a sudden, that makes it easier for the next kid that might not be a leader, might not be ready to make that decision. Well, if he did it, I'm going to do it, right? And that's what we're seeing, is that we're having momentum. And that, to me, is stronger than anything else, right? Is to create that momentum and keep that thing going. And so we understand that we'll be as good as the players we bring in this place. And then it's our job to develop them, right? But most importantly, we have to outwork every coaching staff in the country in recruiting. You can outwork people in recruiting. Like, it's not that you're saying something that nobody else is saying. No. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people say the same thing I've said.
Right.
But can we outwork them? Do you have a relationship with mom, dad, coach, sister, champion, girlfriend, whoever? Are you in constant communication with these kids? But at the end of the day, they're going to go somewhere they trust that coach. I try not to sell coaches. I try to say, listen, don't make a decision based off a coach, because a coach can be hired and fired like that. But in my head, I know that that's a big part of it.
Right.
Do they trust, respect, and love that coach? And that's where I think we have to outwork everybody in the country in that aspect.
See, now, wouldn't you want to play for this guy? I mean, he's talking about outworking Oklahoma, Alabama. I mean, he's talking about outworking these guys during recruiting, which is phenomenal. I'm going to wind down right now, but one of the things I do want to talk about, how has the transfer portal has it thrown a wrench in recruiting? Or, I mean, as a defensive coordinator and a coach, I mean, what's your approach to the transfer portal?
Yeah, I don't know if it's really affected Notre Dame that much, because I think a lot of these individuals that come to Notre Dame realize what the degree from Notre Dame can do for you, right? And so I don't know if I really want to leave and not get this degree that's going to take care of me for the rest of my life. So I don't know if it's truly affected us, but it's there. right? And we evaluate sometimes in a transfer portal and see if it's the right fit for us. But what is it created? It's an option. It's an option that if you don't have a connection, I tell coaches all the time, if you don't have a connection with your players, that transfer portal becomes really attractive, right? If all of a sudden you're not playing, but we got a great connection, you know I love and care for you, you know I'm going to do what's best for the team, and we have an honest and open relationship, right? Then maybe that transfer portal isn't that attractive. But the minute you feel like you're on your own, nobody cares about you, you're not playing, you're homesick, that thing becomes really attractive, you know what I mean? And so that's where we as a coaching staff have to unit strength. You got to have that relationship with 10 guys. It isn't Coach Freeman with 50. It's 10 guys that you have to have that unique relationship with to make sure that you know everything that's going on in that person's life, because there's a lot of stuff going on in these young people's lives, man. And if you don't have that relationship with your players, crazy things can happen.
The last question, how did you meet your wonderful wife, Joanna?
Listen, I tried, like, she chased me over and over and over. No, it might have been the opposite. You know, we actually lived in the same apartment complex in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm trying to think how to tell this story. You know what I mean?
She's just smiling, so I don't know what that means.
No, listen. I've said this before, recruiting is so important, right? I had to work. I outworked my opponents, and I won. You know what I mean? And that's
And you also got to remember this being live streamed, so you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, I had to chase and work, and thank God that I gave her 6 kids, so now she's going to be rough for her to leave me, you know? So I got to keep her now. I got to keep recruiting that one, for sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, our Bob Hinton defensive coordinator for the University of Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman.
Yep.